Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim, here today with Lance for part 2 of this conversation with Jen and Katie about the murder of Jen's mom, Julianne Stallman, from Butte, Montana in November of 1994. And make sure to stay tuned to the end of this interview for Lance and I's final thoughts. Please like and subscribe, and you can comment on YouTube or Spotify and let us know your thoughts on these episodes.
And folks, Tim and I are going to be at CrimeCon this September, the 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's in Denver, Colorado. We're going to have a live session with the brilliant Joseph Scott Morgan. You can check out his show called Body Bags. It's a great show. We're going to have a session there with him at CrimeCon. We're going to be talking about this phenomenon, this New England serial killer phenomenon that's been happening over the course of the past few months up here in New England. And you can get 10% off your standard badge by going to crimecon.com and just using the code Crawlspace, all one word. And that's the other show that we produce here. Crawlspace will give you 10% off your standard badge at CrimeCon. See you there.
Please follow us on social media at Missing CSM. We're going to break quick for commercial, and we'll be right back with Katie and Jen. Can we talk about the letter? What is the story with this anonymous letter that was delivered to Brian Skinner?
I got this letter. So back, it is postmarked July 26th, 1994. It's a typed letter, and it basically reads, it's addressed to Brian, and it's talking about what a great person he is, what a wonderful man he is, and how we don't want to see him hurt. And it's basically talking about when, over a weekend, when Brian apparently was out of town, that my mom was seen at the Wise River Club.
Do you want me to read it, Jen? I think it would be good to have it read.
Yeah, sure. You can go ahead and read it, yeah.
So just for posterity, this letter was mailed to Brian, we're assuming, right? And then how did you come by this?
So after my mom had died, Brian actually gave me this letter. And I had the original letter in the envelope for many, many years before I turned it over. Well, the police department knew I had it, but for some reason I didn't want to just give the whole thing up until probably maybe 8 years ago. I actually gave it to them because then I was thinking, okay, maybe we can get a DNA profile off of the lick part of the envelope. Because it was like, technology kept coming and we kept getting all these new advances and stuff. And I thought, let's test this envelope and see who the hell wrote this. Like, who was stalking my mom to the point where they wrote Brian a letter, typed it out on a typewriter, and sent it to him.
It says, so this is 4 months received from Brian 4 months before the murder. It says, Brian, you are a wonderful man and we don't want to see you hurt. You deserve someone who will love you and who you can trust. Someone who won't cheat on you the minute you turn your back. Love is blind. You should open your eyes and see what a conniving, lying bitch you are dealing with. You deserve better. Ask Julianne where her car was Saturday night and Sunday. Maybe she'll tell you the truth that it was parked behind the Wise River bar. How convenient that her ex-husband's truck was parked in front of the bar all night. Maybe he walked home. When the cat's away, the mice will play. When you are away, Julie will hit on anyone. Haven't you wasted enough time on that slut? Hasn't she hurt you too many times already? Why can't you see her for what she really is? She doesn't love you, even though she tells everyone she does. She's not capable of love. She uses people. She cares only for herself and what she can get from people. And she doesn't care who she hurts along the way. Maybe when you know where she spent the weekend, you will finally see her for the bitchy slut she is. We feel you had the right to know. When I first read this, I knew it in my bones, and I know it to this day. A woman wrote this. There is no doubt. It could have been one of probably two women in the story. It was probably Sherry or Jamie. Obviously that's all just guessing, but those are the two women in her life that would have had the most motivation to write something like this. But this language to me is obviously somebody who is seethingly jealous of your mom, insecure of their own position with Brian, which obviously would point to somebody like Jamie, or somebody who is insecure about their connection with Van, which is the ex-husband that she's referring to in this letter, which obviously would be Sherry. The when the cat's away, the mice will play. When you are away, Julie will hit on anyone. I mean, it's like a bad attempt at poetry. There's no doubt in my mind that a jealous, immature, angry woman wrote this. And it's wild that it was received 4 months before your mom's case. I mean, that's crazy.
What do you make of the fact that they use the term we?
I myself think that it's just a way for the author to not be alone. Like, I have a team of people here who, we believe that you deserve better. We want more for you, kind of thing like that. Like,
we are a small foreign faction in the John Bonet case.
I mean, I always felt that Jamie the Prouse wrote this letter. I think it's not anything Sherry Stallman would have done. She would have picked up the phone and called Brian Skinner. Plus, Brian Skinner and her had already had conversations by both of their accounts. They both admit that they'd have conversations together, Sherry and Brian.
What about Sherry and Jamie? Do we have any record of any interaction they would have had? Is there any chance that they would have teamed up to write something like this, if we're to take that last line seriously?
No. I mean, not to my knowledge does either one of them openly admit that they had any communication with the other one. I don't think so. I think that this just shows the immaturity, like you said, and jealousy of a person.
And then we know that Jamie wrote a card to your mom, which was almost like an apology card, basically saying, I think you're a really great person. I'm sorry that we're kind of mixed up in this ugly thing together. It sounds to me like a young, immature, catty woman who's in over her head with an older man who has an older, more well-matched with him love interest, and she's trying to be included in this dysfunctional, love triangle. And this would be consistent with that too, in my opinion. It's definitely interesting. And listen, if this ever goes to trial, this is going to be a hell of a piece of circumstantial evidence, especially if Butte PD still has that envelope and they can run it through some of the updated. Technology's come a long way since then.
They've not tested it. As hard as I've pushed for them to test it, even when Paul Holes was involved, I just wanted to know who wrote this letter. And maybe they used water. Maybe there is no DNA on there, but maybe there is. And I had it for years, and I never, and it was just in with all my stuff. So I've handled it plenty of times. So if they were to do a swab or something off the outside, more than likely would come back to me, because I just had it for all those years. And they just won't test it. I mean, I don't know why they won't test it. I don't know why they don't think it's important to find out who was stalking her besides Brian Skinner, because he openly admits that he was driving by her house and things like that. But this is a different person. This is somebody else. This is a woman.
This is somebody who was sitting outside of the Wise River Bar on Saturday night and Sunday.
Yeah, to see that she was there in the morning.
That her car was parked behind the Wise River Bar, and that Van's car was parked there too. So this is somebody that knows what kind of vehicle Van Stallman drives and what kind of vehicle Julie drives, and was parked outside of the place that they were both at on a night and a day. So somebody who didn't have any other plans at the time, and if Brian Skinner's out of town when this allegedly happens, Jamie's not hanging out with him. I mean, what better place does she have to be than slinking around behind Julie and figuring out where she is? I mean, obviously this is all just conjecture, who knows, but it's really interesting. And it's not like this was received 3 years before. I mean, this is right in the middle of whatever action would have led to this.
Did a lot of people at the time own typewriters in your circle of friends and family and acquaintances?
How do we know it's a typewriter?
Like right here, like, I don't know if you guys can see that, like that mistake is there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even whited out, and then it's like typed right below in the K, like right there.
Mm-hmm. And then the G and the D on behind.
Yeah.
Oh, and when it says, haven't you wasted enough time, there's actually an I. Like, they typed I enough and then
went over it.
Typed an E, like hit two buttons at the same time, which doesn't happen on a computer. I guess that would have happened on a typewriter.
Right,
Do you see that?
And then, there's like a lot, like her name is spelled wrong in here. I mean, a lot of people still to this day spell her name wrong, which I can't even tell you how bad it irritates me. But anyways, And then there's like double spaces where there shouldn't be, like triple spaces and stuff. Like, it's super like, let's just write this as bad as we can so that nobody can figure out who's writing it. Like, I don't know. This just, like, I'm such a, like an English nerd. I might not be able to speak good English and say a complete sentence very often in the best ways. But when it comes to like writing and spacing and correct punctuation and correct spelling, like, I'm a super nerd about it. And this is all sorts of messed up. Like, and then I don't know if it was done purposefully or just because we're new at using a typewriter and we haven't used one in so long. I don't know.
Yeah, this is definitely very like Murder, She Wrote. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to type up this big old screw you letter to Brian Skinner on a typewriter because I'm a grown up. You know, I'm an angry grown up and I can do that. That's kind of just hits on the immaturity to me coming from the person that did this. If you were a grown up, a true grown up, you'd pick up the phone and say, "Hey, guess what, Brian? Guess what Julie was doing while you were out of town?"
That's the reason why I asked, because it does look like there were some mistakes in there and the person might not have been that familiar with typing. And my brain went to like, maybe this person went to the local library and used their electric typewriter for the first time, or maybe like the third time in their life. And, you know, I don't know, maybe that, I don't, again, like it's all speculation, but it does speak to the mindset that the person was in, that they would go through this effort to do this, and it was so close to your mother's murder. Any chance that this could have been an employee of the bar who would have known the cars that were in the parking lot? But then again, like, why would they care?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it could have been anybody, but again, like you said, why would they care?
Well, they might care if it's an unrequited love and they've been working with Julie and have a crush on her and she's, you know, not shown any interest. I mean, the answer always seems far away until it's right there. You know, it could very well be something like that. I never saw anything. I don't remember seeing anything in the police reports or like interview transcripts about people that worked at the bar. But I would hope certainly that those people, males, would have been included in that big DNA net that they did. But, you know, listen, until the answer comes out, nothing's off the table. Certainly possible.
And tell us about this composite sketch too. Where did that come from?
Oh, so there's a sketch that was drawn by a psychic back, I think
96.
Yeah, 96.
March of 96.
So I had kind of gotten involved in like just reaching and doing whatever I could at the time, or asking for any help from anybody in anything. And so I worked with a group of psychics out of the state of Washington. And they had some information that they probably wouldn't have known about. They weren't really psychics, is the way I look at it. But one of them did draw that picture, a composite sketch, and it looks eerily similar to Brian Skinner.
It looks like somebody drew a photo of Brian Skinner.
Yeah, for real. It really
does.
It does. The uncanniness of it is ridiculous. So if anybody would if you put that on the news, I suppose you would get a lot of people that would say, "Oh my God, that's Brian Skinner."
Is this out? Is a copy of the letter out? Has that been released anywhere? Is this composite sketch anywhere where people can see any of this stuff?
So the letter itself, that they made that public on up until the Paul Holes was involved, it wasn't public. But Paul Holes speaks of it and interviews Brian Skinner about that letter, and Jamie LaProuse. On the episode, and that composite sketch I don't believe was ever released anywhere. I think just because it was a psychic sent it to me, a psychic drew it up in a vision that she saw, and it looks just like Brian Skinner. So I think I've always thought, like, I don't need anybody else telling me it looks like Brian Skinner, because it literally looks like Brian Skinner.
And this psychic had no idea of what Brian Skinner looked like, right?
No, I don't even know that. I mean, no, I think the only pictures I've ever had or seen of Brian lately have been on Facebook, and up until that point, I mean, I guess I have some pictures of him and my mom, but none of those were made public back in 96. You know, Facebook wasn't around back then, and I didn't have any kind of social media or anything like that back then, and nothing was ever like published in the newspapers or anything like that. I think there's just photographs of her, I'm not even sure if there was pictures of me back then, that early on, but in the newspapers there was photographs of my mom, and it was mostly just a standard picture of her at my wedding. It was just kind of her by herself. That was kind of the picture that they always posted. There was an article, I'm not exactly sure when, but there was a bunch of different pictures of my mom. I don't think at that point it was 96, and I don't think there's any of Brian in that newspaper article either. I do remember really keeping a lot of stuff really close and not giving out information, because I knew that if I had given out too much information or the wrong information, that it could really hurt the case, because there was obviously certain things that had happened inside that house that only the killer would know. And I knew that from the very beginning that I had to really watch what I said and who I talked to and how I shared information. And I think I've been really, really good over the years about that, until recently, where I'm thinking, I guess it doesn't matter what I say. There are still things, obviously, I wouldn't say to hurt the case, because I don't ever want to do that. But being more open about how things have been handled and where things have gone or where they haven't gone over the years.
Speaking to that, are you, if you are, you obviously shouldn't say what that evidence would be, but are you aware of any holdback information that the police department is keeping close? Are you aware if they have any?
I think at this point, there's probably not, because the things that I had always really kept big secret about was her diary being gone. Her diary has been missing ever since she died, and I never released that information. But the police, the police released that information with Paul Holes, and so they made that public. I think things like the knife never being recovered, that's kind of always been, I think in the beginning that wasn't kind of known, but then it kind of came out later that has never been recovered. So at this point, I don't think that they have any information that I don't know about, or that they are holding really close to the cuff. And if they do, they've held it from me all these years. But I've been so involved and so in everything, I guess I would be, well, you know what, there probably are maybe some things. There was something that I learned when I was doing my interview with Paul Holes. I didn't even know that they had this information until Paul Holes presented it to me.
Are you comfortable sharing what that was?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. So during my interview with Paul Holes, we were sitting across from kind of across from each other, and he slides on this coffee table. He slides across this picture. It was a copy. It was a copy of a copy. And he said, "Do you know who wrote this?" And as soon as I looked at it, I knew that I had written it. And I said, "I did. I wrote that." And he said, "What does it say?" And so I read the words that I could see on it. And he says, "No, if you authored that, what does it say?" And I was like, I don't know what it says. Like, I did that 27 years ago. I don't know what it says. And it really was it was a pivotal moment in the interview, I think, because it was a letter that I had written to Sherry Stallman. And it was kind of a psycho letter, if you will. And when I said that it was me that authored it, the whole room, everybody was like, like you could feel the air just being sucked out of the room. And at the moment I was like, what the hell? Like, what's the big deal? I didn't even know they had this. I didn't know Sherry had turned this into the police department. Anyways, it was a real psycho letter. It was cut out of magazines. It was words cut out of magazines. It was glued to this piece of paper. And I barely remember doing it, but I did it with my best friend. And it says something similar about, like, I know what you did. It's just something super random. So we took a break shortly after that. And then I went over to the hair and makeup chair, and she was like, "Are you serious? You wrote that?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. I was 21. I was losing my mind. I don't know why I wrote it. I was consumed with grief and anger and a million different things. Like, I can't explain it. I don't even barely remember writing it." And she was like, when they showed that to Paul yesterday, he said that he's only seen that one other time in his career, and the person that did that was the killer. And I said, well, girl, I'm not the killer, but that is some psycho stuff, I will admit. I got myself 86 out of production after that, because after that interview, I had contacted the producers, and I said, hey, can we not show that? It's not that I did it. I'm admitting I did it. I didn't know that they had that. I didn't know Sherry turned that into the police department. But I don't want that to be like some sort of a thriller for the episode. Like, I don't want them to show something like that and be like, as a tease. You know what I mean? Like, that crazy letter that I wrote, if they showed that as a tease, that would take away from the reason that I was doing it anyways. And so I didn't want it to be part of the show at all. And I requested that not be part of the show. And they said, we can't guarantee you that won't be in the cut. You know, we just can't guarantee that. And I said, well, please just understand that this is my trauma. This is my family's trauma. And this isn't for entertainment purposes, but I see how it is for entertainment purposes. And I don't want that used. And they couldn't guarantee that it wouldn't be used. So I had a lawyer at the time, because I had consulted with an attorney before I even agreed to be part of the show. I wanted him to read through everything, and I just wanted it to be okay. I didn't want it to just do it because I wanted so bad for publicity. So I contacted my lawyer and I said, hey, this is what happened. He said, I'll take care of it. And so he sent a letter to production, and I was 86 after that. I was done. I didn't film anymore. I wasn't. I was just cut. And looking back, I'm okay with it, I guess. But it didn't fit their narrative, I guess, and that was upsetting, because it was. I watch all these shows. I listen to all these podcasts. It is entertainment. But I think when the tables were turned and the episode became about my family and my mom, it wasn't entertainment anymore. And I just didn't want the focus to be on what a psycho I was at 21 versus what happened to my mom and who killed her.
All right, we're going to take a quick break for commercial. And just a reminder, folks, that we will return at the end of this conversation with some final thoughts.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
No, that's totally understandable. And actually, it is so irritating to me to hear that. That is completely reckless and really, like, honestly stupid on the part of Paul Holes to look at that the day before and then announce to the crew, I have only seen this one other time, and that was when the person was the killer. If you did this to your mom, you would have been caught.
Yeah.
And why would he say that? Why would he say that to the crew so that everyone could have this reaction, I guess, to him, and then the sliding of it over the table? It's completely irrelevant. It's you.
It's cheap.
As a 21-year-old who's suffering the loss of the brutal murder of her mom, who, oh, wow, you flew off the handle for a minute. Holy shit. Like, now we're going to bring this up on television? Get out of here with that. Stupid. The only other time I saw this. Shut up.
I mean, it was so crazy, because at the moment I saw it, and for a split second I thought, okay, I'm going to fucking lie. I don't know who did it. But then I was like, okay, I'm sitting next to Paul Holes, and I was like, okay, that was me. But I didn't think it was that big of a deal at the time. And then, like I said, like, all the air just got sucked out of the room. It was like, it was all this camera crew and the lighting people and the producers and everything. And it was so, like, I was like, yeah, that was me. What does it say? Well, you can see what it says. I don't know what the rest of it says, don't you know? And he's like, this is what I have. Like, and it's kind of folded so you can't see all the words. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck it says. I don't know what it says. Well, why did you write it? I don't fucking know. I was 21. I don't know. And the only reason I remember even that I wrote it is because my best friend did it with me, and she reminded me 5 years ago that we did this. I literally don't recall doing it, but I know that I did. And it was so just weird and dramatic and like, oh, who wrote this? And it just was I'm okay with it now, not being as involved as I was. I was in the show for 35 seconds or whatever. But, my aunt was part of the show and stuff like that. And, it got out there. It was, national, and it, we got a couple tips from it. But I will say that I did have, after I saw it air and thought about it for a little while, I did have some, in a sense, buyer's remorse for participating, just because my brother, for the very first time, had agreed to interview with them, and he has never spoken publicly about it up until that point. You never would have guessed he was part of it from watching the episode. He wasn't even, not even a snippet of him. His interview was part of the episode that aired. And that really kind of bummed me out, because he put himself out there and he participated and was so vulnerable that to not have any part of his interview, like, he found her. He was the first on the scene. He made that 911 call. He's been behind the scenes this whole time. Like, he's never agreed to anything before, and to not share his side of the story or anything about him really, really upset me and kind of hurt me and hurt him. It really hurt him that he wasn't involved in the actual airing of it.
I do remember watching the episode, and thinking that there were definitely some pretty compelling interviews that came out of it, which in hindsight, now that I've watched it like 1,000 times, I'm glad to have seen Brian and Jamie and just kind of the way that they are, the way that they speak about this. I think Brian would probably agree that he maybe didn't come across as well in the episode as he would have liked, I'm sure. I think Paul is a great interviewer from the things that I've seen him do. And I think there were a lot of kind of like words in between words in a lot of the interviews in the episode, which I think is good. When this case comes to a resolution, I'm sure we will have a different lens looking back on things like that. And there might be things within that episode for us to pick up on, things that maybe we missed along the way, things that everybody missed along the way. So I'm just always curious to look back when we do get answers and see how that episode lives on in that light. It's going to be interesting.
I think there was a lot of, in a sense, especially when I watch it back, there like victim shaming. And I know that my mom put herself in a situation and put herself into a light of not being liked by other people, other women, for numerous reasons. But let's not shame her. Let's not shame her for the things that she did when we are accepting of, let's just say, Brian Skinner admitting that he's slept with a lot of women at the time. He's bragging about how many women he had at one particular time and acting like he's so great because he's got all these girlfriends. Okay, my mom was a grown woman. She was, in a sense, single. Brian Skinner had girlfriends. Van Stallman had a wife. Like, let's not just talk about how she was doing bad and how she was, doing something wrong when they too were doing the same thing, but we're not talking about them. We're not talking about how immoral they are behaving, but we're talking about a woman who is dead, who lost her life, who had people and friends that cared about her dearly, and we're talking bad about her. Brian Skinner and Jamie LaProuse speak poorly of her. They say not nice things about her. And I'm the type of person, like, yeah, I might not like somebody, but I don't think that I could ever speak poorly of the dead for any reason, no matter how much I dislike them or how they wronged me. I could be wrong, but at this point in my life, I'm not going to speak bad about somebody that died, nor am I going to hold my mom on this super high pedestal and act like she didn't do anything wrong or act like she was perfect, because she wasn't. Right. She was human.
Well, nobody is. Nobody's perfect. And,
right.
And it's not just perfect people that are deserving of justice and answers and closure and things like that. And not only would your mom have to be, she was imperfect and therefore deserving of justice and grace and closure. But you and your family, just like your mom was, a true, obviously true victims in this story. And every single person who has been affected by this atrocious, short-sighted, impulsive, crazy, unhinged attack on an innocent woman, every single person in this story deserves answers and deserves to know exactly who did this and why.
Really well said, Katie and Jen, and we really appreciate your time here today and telling us all about your mom Julianne's case. Is there any final thoughts here that you'd like to give?
I think I just want to say that I hope and I pray that somebody will come forward, and that if you don't think that something you saw or you know is important, it very well could be the most important thing that we're missing. I just want people to say what you know and not be afraid. Be courageous and do the right thing. And it could be the littlest bit of information that holds the key to the solving of this case. If the person is already dead, I'll accept that. At least I'll have a name and I'll know the who. And I feel like my family and my mother deserves to know the who. And let's just put this to bed. Let's just be done with this. I just want anybody that has any bit of information to just call. If it's information you think that they already know about, maybe they do, but maybe they don't. Just call. Just let the Butte Silverbow Police Department know what you know, and let's get this case solved. It's a solvable case. It's solvable. I honestly believe this is a 100% solvable case. We just gotta figure it the out.
We have evidence in this case. There is DNA that is currently being tested by one of the most highly spoken of labs in the country, if not the world. The DNA in this case is going to get solved. It's going to solve this case sooner rather than later. So whoever has information about who did this, they are up against a clock that's going to catch up to them. As soon as that full male profile makes it into a genealogy database, we are seeing cold cases from decades and decades ago get answers now in this year. Some of the biggest cases that I've been following for years, that you guys have been following for years, are getting answers now. That's going to happen in your mom's case, and it's going to be any day now. And so if someone's holding on to information that they know is missing, they are betting against a clock that they are going to lose against. And the police and you and your family and a judge and a jury are not going to have any sympathy for somebody who sat on information that could have solved a case for this long, and it's going to come out. And so anybody who has information, whether you're involved in this or not, if doing the right thing isn't enough of a reason for you, save your own ass and beat the clock, because there's DNA. We're going to get an answer one way or the other, and you are going to be looked more favorably upon if you go and tell your story to the police first, and you are responsible with the information that you have. That's just the bottom line. And if you can't appeal to people's heartstrings, you can appeal to people's self-preservation. And they need to do the right thing for themselves, which is to come forward with the truth before it bites them in the ass.
And for those who aren't watching this and just listening to it, you're not seeing Katie's serious face right now, and I am going to give her like family secrets on my end just to appease her, because
tell us the truth.
That was a serious face. So
sorry.
No. It's a serious message. It's honest, and it's deliberately delivered, and the face really matched it. So
that was my mom voice.
I actually was picturing like, wow, is this what her kid, like the discipline that
it is?
Wow,
that's exactly what it looks like.
Well done. But
thank you.
Yeah, very well said. And if there's anything that comes up, any updates in your mom's unsolved murder, please let us know. You're more than welcome to come back on if you have any other information. And is there you mentioned the police, but is there any direct call to action that you'd like to give right here?
If people have information and they're not comfortable going through the police department or Crime Stoppers, which they can make anonymous tips through Crime Stoppers, they can also make a fake Facebook page and send a message to your mom's page.
Yes.
That's happened before and that led somewhere. And if people are more comfortable doing that, they absolutely should. The worst thing they can do is sit on information. So get it out somehow, however you feel comfortable doing that. Why don't you share your mom's Facebook page and how people can get in touch with you?
Her Facebook page is Justice for Julianne Stallman, Victim of Homicide. You can send a message through that. And like Katie said, you can remain anonymous if you want. We've had somebody in the past make a fake Facebook profile and they remained anonymous and got the information to me, and I got the information to the Butte Silverwell Police Department.
All right, Lance, we are back here for final thoughts after the conversation with Jen and Katie. What a mysterious case. I have so many thoughts. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, this segment of Final Thoughts I was really looking forward to because back when we interviewed Jen and Katie, we weren't doing these Final Thoughts and we would just sort of save them for a subscription show, or we would just like talk about it off air. And it would be something that could be discussed and, ruminated about. I wish we had done Final Thoughts back then, because listening to this conversation now just put me in an entirely different mindset from when I first heard it. There's a lot of interesting, conflicting feelings that I have about this. What were your first thoughts on this when you were listening to it back? I just want to see if they kind of align with the initial gut feelings that I started to have re-listening to it.
Well, I guess I would have to kind of fast forward to the end about the DNA and how the police have run. I don't know. I think I heard the number 20 in the documentary. 28 in the interview.
Yeah.
But I think they said 20 in the new documentary that was released in January of 2025. And it was a really cool documentary. It's on the KXLF website, and it was made by Carly Rainey. And I think the officer in that said 20. I don't know if he's talking about male. Maybe he's talking about male potential perpetrators, and the total number is 28 because that includes women too. I'm not exactly sure, but I do know the killer's DNA. We're assuming it's the killer's DNA for good reason, I would say, because it was found in 3 separate areas in the crime scene. It was found on Julianne's shoes, it was found under her fingernails, and it was found on a towel that was used presumably to clean himself, and that himself being the killer. And so it's a male profile. And so, yeah, it's been run against a lot of the suspects and folks that come up in this conversation as suspicious. So if one of them had a hand in it, they must have been working with someone who was unknown to authorities. It's quite shocking to me, actually.
Yeah, that was shocking to me as well. My first gut reaction was that this wasn't entirely a planned execution, that this was at least 2 people, and it was to frighten her. It was to injure her. I think they definitely wanted to injure her. But I think after hearing Jen talk about this, I think she fought back so hard, it just escalated and just rage took over. Because all of that was rage. I mean, they almost decapitated her. And the DNA's under her fingernails, on the bottom of her shoes, which means at some point this male was injured. I'm assuming the DNA on the bottom of her shoes is his blood, right?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Right, so he's injured so bad that blood has dripped from him to the floor. And she has gotten up. I don't know. I guess maybe this was just what I put together in my head. She steps in it. So she's still standing. When he's injured so bad, blood's dripping to the floor. Or maybe he's injured so bad, she's laying on the floor, she's kicking at him, and she's getting his blood on the bottom of her shoe. Either way, she's drawn blood on one of her attackers, probably while she's being stabbed by another one. And that was the when I said in the beginning that this would like moved me, that was sort of this like light bulb moment at how violent and how hard she fought back, and it escalating to the point where they were just trying to stop her from fighting back in any way they could. And at some point they realized we have to go we have to go the whole 9 yards here, because this isn't going to end with her just being injured and everybody walking away and saying it was a crime, like it was just a fight of passion. And this is going to turn into something where one of our lives has to end here. Like, that is insane to me.
Yeah, police called it a crime of passion. They said there's a lot of hate there at the crime scene.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you're, I guess, presuming that there are two killers here.
Yeah.
It seems like the killer or killers must have, like, knocked on her door, knocked on Julianne's door, because there's no sign of forced entry, anything like that. And the murder weapon was almost definitely the, one of her knives in the kitchen. So yeah, that makes for an interesting scenario when she presumably opened the door for this person. You would think she wouldn't open the door for someone she knew was angry at her, because as we went over with Jen and Katie, she was being stalked.
Yes.
And there was two people apparently doing that. So that was Brian Skinner, who was apparently stalking her. And then there was also Sherry Stallman, who had an incident with her in the bathroom it was like a club. So there were people that were angry at her. It seemed like most people in town really liked her. This is a crazy scenario to picture, that if maybe she didn't know the person who knocked on the door, you know what I mean? And maybe someone that one of these people who was angry with her was also there but hiding or something like that. I just don't know. But this is also like a residential area. You know, I do implore people to watch that documentary, because you get a lot more visuals. And the crime scene was absolutely brutal. There are crime scene photos, and there is a lot of blood in the scene. A lot of it is sort of censored, kind of like fuzzy, so you can't really make out some of the details. But yeah, it was an absolutely brutal scene. And I'm just shocked that how, like, there were no witnesses to seeing a person or two people enter her house. I don't know.
Yes, wasn't a quiet crime.
No, couldn't have been.
No way that this type of fight happened without an incredible amount of yelling, screaming. This is remarkable to me that no one heard. People probably did hear. We just don't know about it. And
yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I was rolling that around in my head too, about like, how did they get in with no forced entry? And probably a very simple reason could be that they had followed her and waited for her to open the door, and they pushed her in. That could be a reason. Someone could have just said, like, listen, we need to talk. I'm just here to sit down with you, talk this thing through. But I doubt it. I doubt it, because of the way it ended up. I don't think anybody who could do that to somebody would start that situation by faking being there to reconcile. Whoever did this went there to hurt her, and it escalated, in my opinion. And I don't think that they lied their way in through the door to be like nice or whatever. I think they were there with the intent to do it and just get to the point and do it.
Yeah, interesting to hear Jen's first reaction to when she heard that her mom was murdered and actually dead. Her first instinct when she spoke with her brother was that she must have died in a car accident.
Yeah.
And then when she got to the scene, she said, "That bitch did it."
Yeah.
And she was apparently talking about Jamie LaProwse. And so, yeah, police kind of told her that later. I guess she had not remembered that she had said that. So it speaks a lot to, I would think, to someone, the daughter of a murder victim, her first instinct of who this could have been. I feel like that's valuable information.
Yeah. And it's based on experiences that were very fresh in her memory.
Yeah, and so we mentioned that Julianne was being stalked. So they said Brian Skinner was stalking my mom openly. And there was a letter that was sent to Brian Skinner that was 4 months before Julianne's murder. It's a really interesting part in the conversation. And Katie is pretty adamant that a woman wrote it. My first instinct when I heard it was that Brian wrote it because it's complimentary of Brian. And I kind of feel like that's something people do when they're trying to, I guess, throw off someone else. Like it's sort of like a tell in my opinion.
Yeah.
Compliment themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt the same way, but there was something in the way that those sentences were structured that Katie was convinced a woman wrote it. And I don't have that instinct.
Yeah, Katie could very well be right on that. It's just weird to me that letter even occurs,
yes.
Before Julianne's murder. Just bizarre.
It is. I mean, I'm laughing and shaking my head here because it's such a sick game that people are playing in this. I don't want to say love triangle because there's not a lot of love here, but in this triangle. And it's this weird sick game. And one person writes this letter about the person who's murdered, saying how terrible of a person she is and how great of a guy you are. And you need to open your eyes and see how horrible she is. And I'm only telling you this because we all care about you so much.
Yeah. Why would you write that anonymously?
Why would you write that anonymously? Why would you tell somebody?
It's very strange.
Yeah.
And yeah, the knife from the kitchen, presumably the murder weapon, has never been recovered as of this recording. And I also found it interesting that there was holdback information that police had about Julianne's diary having been stolen from the scene. Really interesting stuff. You'd have to imagine, if I'm putting my investigator hat, I'm imagining that the killer's name was in that diary, and that's why they took it. I'm sure that's not 100% certain. There's probably plenty of reasons serial killers do things or killers do bizarre things, but that's just struck me as a clue there. Yeah,
definitely. And the knife not being discovered yet and essentially being determined that it came from Julianne's apartment, that knife belonged to her as a regular steak cutting knife. That also speaks to me about the type of attack that it was, that this wasn't an intended murder. This escalated and somebody grabbed whatever was in reach that could stop Julianne from fighting back. And then that knife will never be found. That knife is sunk very deep in some body of water. I don't think it was buried. I think this thing was put in a bag with a bunch of rocks and thrown into some body of water that was randomly chosen.
Yeah.
How is there so much blood and DNA and there's no advancement in this investigation?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the DNA is at a very good DNA lab and working on genetic genealogy, trying to narrow down who this killer is. But it's kind of just shocking that a murder like this happens and the killer wasn't in CODIS, so never committed a felony, wasn't matched with any of the people that the police and the investigation suspected, apparently. So who the hell did this? Was it someone random? That just doesn't seem possible to me.
No. First of all, I loved having Jen on because she had no problem swearing. She was very unfiltered, and yeah. I just love that when people aren't concerned about that, because if that's your emotion, then that's your emotion. If that's how you express yourself, that's totally cool with me. I loved that, and I also really understood what she said this time around. It's interesting, right? When we interview people, they'll say things and it doesn't sink in until a little later because you're getting the information in real time and you're processing it, so your brain is trying to keep up with everything. And then you listen back and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't really hear her. I heard, I the words came in, but I really didn't hear her the first time around when she talked about how, I'm paraphrasing, I think, but she said she was getting impatient after 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And then she's like, people were getting mad at me because I was like, what's taking so long? And she's like, that was 6 months. And now look where we're at. So what she's saying there is like, if people had just listened to her after 6 months, we wouldn't be here. So she was right. What is taking so long? Why has it been 6 months? Like, that is totally reasonable to get upset about.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Especially when this seems on the surface like it's an obvious case, but there's got to be something in here that is preventing it from being solved. Like, it seems like none of the suspects are the person who wielded the knife, and DNA hasn't led to who was yet. The killer must have been more random than we know in her life. Must have been on the sidelines in some way, is my take on that.
Or the DNA samples were just corrupted somehow, not properly collected. Maybe results are just inconclusive because of the way that they were collected. That part of the conversation wasn't really discussed, but that was something new that was going through my head re-listening to it. I got so hyper-focused on like a clear 1 + 1 is 2 answer to these things. Here's the blood, run the DNA. If the person has their information out there, we're going to get the answer. But maybe the collection just wasn't proper enough to get that type of result, It's
possible. It seems like in the time since this interview that we conducted with Jen and Katie, and the time that this documentary was released on the KXLF site from Butte, Montana, that they had recovered an additional DNA spot. I think it was the one on her foot, on the bottom of her shoe, was the one that seems to have been recovered in the past couple of years. So it seems like they're still working with this. It seems like this was at a very reputable DNA lab. I just don't know why it's not connecting to an answer.
I don't know.
And then, Lance, finally, near the end of the conversation, we spoke about a production that was done, I think, by the Oxygen Network on the Julianne Stallman murder, and Paul Holes was working on it, and they were really working with this DNA and trying to bring it to the finish line. But in the filming, it seems like some controversial moments happened, and Jen described one in the conversation that kind of got a rise out of us.
Yeah. I don't know. I like Paul Holes. Don't get me wrong. I think Paul Holes has done an incredible job with the work that he has been a part of, from the Golden State Killer, prior to that, what he's done, like how he has managed his entire professional career, and now what he does more in the public spotlight and highlighting certain cases and talking about in a responsible way and in a respectful way victims, survivors, their families. I think he does a great job. But this whole gotcha moment, I don't care who it was. Like, that is so gross to me. And if we see him at CrimeCon, 10% off your standard badge with code Crawlspace, by the way, people. If we see him at CrimeCon, and if it comes up, I have no problem asking him what happened there, because it seems so out of character for somebody to set a trap for the daughter of a murder victim like the way he did. And maybe I'm misreading the situation. Maybe Jen misread it, but she described it at least twice to us, and said this was done in front of the crew. And I guess I wouldn't have been so fired up about it if it had just been a moment between the two of them, and he told her, maybe kind of in confidence, but not really, but like, listen, hey, the only other time I've seen this was from the actual perpetrator. That's the only other time I've seen something like this happen. But instead it was this like producer set up gotcha moment, this trap, and they all knew she wasn't going to be able to answer it at that moment. She's trying to process being a part of a TV production, and then the crew like literally gasps. Like, that's what they want. And you and I have worked with production companies and been part of these things, and there are moments that are generated that we weren't aware of, and we can only speculate, but this is a moment that was generated as a gotcha moment, and it worked. But I don't know, it's just so out of character and weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, and it certainly wasn't going to lead anywhere. That's
No.
kind of why I get annoyed by it, because it's just a moment.
Yeah, it was a false trap.
And then Jen apparently called the production afterwards and asked them not to. So then that makes it look even more suspicious.
Yeah.
That she doesn't want it in the production. Like, why wouldn't you want that in there? Well, because it goes nowhere. Like,
Yeah.
what are we saying here? That Jen is the murderer? Get out of here.
Right. What are we saying without saying it? You said everything else. The only other time I've seen this. The only other time. So what are you saying, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that is why media can get a bad rap when working with families of victims who are victims themselves. You don't need to put them through that. That's a ridiculous moment that is completely unnecessary for TV.
Yeah, and it reminded me of a moment. I'm not going to bring up any names for this, and you'll know what I'm talking about, and I can say this story without bringing up names, and people will get it, but it did remind me of a moment on the show that we worked on where something happened, and it was set up by the production company, and the result was not what the lead of the show thought it was going to be going into it. And then once they saw that, it created a moment where it was communicated to the production team that was not fair. And it's really tough to take that back once it's out there in the public.
Yeah, it's a dicey situation. Obviously, family members are desperate for coverage. They're desperate for help. They're trying to keep their loved one's name out there in the media, but they don't get treated great all the time, and that's an unfortunate truth about what we do, Lance, here. And we certainly try to do our best with everyone we speak with, but certainly don't set any traps. Yeah.
Only people could be as perfect as you and I in these situations.
Well, we ain't perfect.
We're certainly not perfect, no.
We do our best, and we try to steer away from anything that could be intentionally salacious like that. So I don't know. Anyway, they do a lot of good work. Yeah, like you said, Paul Holes and Oxygen, they do a lot of good work. So don't want to be slandering them completely here. But yeah, I don't know what happened in that moment.
Yeah, maybe we'll find out when we talk to Paul at CrimeCon.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks a lot for listening here. And you can leave a comment. Let us know what you think of this conversation. Let us know what you think happened to Julianne. You can leave a comment on YouTube, on Spotify.
And also leave a comment on how you feel when we do these replays of conversations that are a couple years old. We do enjoy putting the stories back out there to the public. And now that we do these final thoughts, I think that is a really good way to add some new value to the stories that these people come to this show to talk about, their stories, like Jennifer and her mom. So let us know what you think of these replays and these final thoughts.
All right. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll be back next week with another new episode.